Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're just going to wait a few moments and allow people time to join us. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting a few more moments to allow people to log on and join us. All righty, we are going to officially get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hawk Mountain Sanctuary's Autumn Lecture Series. Today's program is Acoustic Bat Survey Kiosk for Public Outreach and Research with Nicole Notarianni, biologist and Hawk Mountain Sanctuary 2021 Spring and Summer Conservation Science Trainee. Woo! Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone joining tonight.
My name is Jamie Dawson, and I'm the Director of Education at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. And thank you to everyone in our audience who is joining us today. As you may know, Hawk Mountain is the world's very first refuge for birds of prey. And we continue to work hard to be leaders in raptor conservation, science, and education locally and globally around the world. Hawk Mountain is a private nonprofit, and membership is the lifeblood of our organization. To all of our members out there, thank you so very much for your support. It means so much to us. And if you're joining us today and you're not a member, we hope that you consider becoming one soon. Hawk Mountain hopes that everyone remains safe and healthy during these times of COVID challenges. And we are so thrilled we're able to provide our local and global community a variety of free virtual programming. But as always, Hawk Mountain greatly appreciates and depends on donations. Just so everyone is aware, today's program is being recorded. The video will then be accessible on Hawk Mountain's YouTube channel as a continued resource. We also have a link on our website directly connecting you to our YouTube channel. At any point during today's program, viewers may submit their questions through the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. We've designated some time after the program to take some questions from the audience. And I couldn't be happier that Nicole is joining us today all the way from sunny Florida to share with us highlights from her recently published research that involves the bat kiosk at Hawk Mountain. So before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to share some of Nicole's background experience with our audience. Nicole is a spring 2020 biology graduate from Millersville University, where she worked closely with Dr. Aaron Haynes and the Applied Conservation Lab, conducting undergraduate research on bats in Pennsylvania. She was a Hawk Mountain sanctioned conservation science trainee for the spring and summer terms of 2021 and is currently working on a bobwhite quail project in Central Florida. She hopes to earn her master's in science and to continue a career in the field of avian conservation biology in the future. Nicole, you are doing awesome things, and I'm so glad I'm able to see you again after when I last saw you in the summer during your traineeship. So warm welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to you for your program.
Cool, thank you for the introduction. So hi everyone, thank you for joining me tonight for this presentation, and thank you for everyone watching in the future. This presentation is going to be on the use of remote acoustic survey devices for bat monitoring, the implementation of a public outreach kiosk at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, and the role of environmental education in bat conservation. So to start, we're going to talk a little bit about the bat species that are native to the state of Pennsylvania. We have 9 native bat species. They're all insectivorous bats, so they use echolocation to catch insect prey on the wing. They're all also part of the suborder of microbats, which is denoted by their size, but they also retain an anatomical function in their ear that changes the way that they use echolocation, which separates them from the other suborder of bat known as the megabats. 4 of these species are also listed by the Pennsylvania Game Commission as species of conservation concern, which basically just means that the Game Commission has identified their populations are vulnerable to extinction and that the state has a high responsibility for the perpetuation of these populations in the future. Unfortunately, all of these species, not just in Pennsylvania, but also throughout the United States, have experienced drastic declines in the past couple decades, and in the past decade in particular because of white nose syndrome. So this is an exotic fungus that spreads from bat-to-bat contact when they're hibernating. So you can see the fuzzy manifestations of this disease, which is where it gets its name. And it causes death in hibernating bats by prematurely burning their fat reserves. So this will increase the number of arousals in hibernation. Bats either they'll migrate to somewhere where there's insects all year, or they'll overwinter in a reduced metabolic state. So bats in Pennsylvania will spend all of the late summer and early fall building up their fat reserves to last the winter. This disease causes increased arousals, which results in them prematurely burning their fat reserves. If they go out before spring, before the insects have emerged, they'll basically succumb to starvation and you'll find them just dead pretty close to outside their hibernacula sites. So this has had a really drastic impact on population sizes past decade. But in addition to this, also the destruction of old growth forests really negatively impacts reproductive ecology. That's important for rearing pups in the summer. Destruction and loss of hibernacula, which can cause them to seek out man-made structures, which can increase human-wildlife conflict. The accumulation of pesticides and insecticides in their bodies also causes mortality, and poor planning of wind energy. So if wind energy is developed along migration routes, this can have really negative impacts on their population, not just bats, but can also lead to pretty high mortality rates of migrating birds as well. So because of this multifaceted declines, it's really important that biologists have a way to monitor these populations. So there's a couple different survey methods that are frequently cited in the literature, one of which is just counting from the ground. So as they're leaving their roost sites or on migration, you can count from the ground. You'll get a pretty good abundance estimate on their population, but you're not going to be able to identify species from the ground. Another method where you can see on the screen here is mist netting. So capture them, it allows you to get a good species index, the population index, but it's stressful for the bats, and it also requires a lot of equipment and personnel training in order to handle wild bats. Another way that it can be monitored is through hibernacula visits. So someone goes in and counts the bats as they're hibernating. This isn't the best method, especially in areas where white nose syndrome is possible. So for this project, the method that we chose was remote acoustic monitoring. So bats as they're feeding, produce a species-specific ultrasonic echolocation waves. So this is how they're able to detect and catch prey on the wing in the dark. So this ultrasonic microphone, you can see it here, is attached to the end of a pole that's affixed to a tree in an area free of clutter. So as bats fly, they're echolocating to find their food. It allows us to get the highest quality recording. So the detector unit is attached to by a wire down here. Detector unit, this translates the ultrasonic waves into an auditory file. So this detector has different settings that you can set quality thresholds, duration thresholds, different seasonal and regional considerations to get the best possible recording that has the highest likelihood of being identified. So this whole setup is left to remotely record each evening from dusk to dawn for multiple weeks. After a couple weeks is through, we'll go back out and we will download the data, and this data will be run through our automated species identification software. So for this project, we used a bat call analysis software called Sonogram. It takes the audio files and plots them as the frequency versus the time. So you'll get a visual display that looks something like what you see on the screen, and this is called a bat sonogram. So the program will go through and look for various points of comparison between the collected call file and a reference library of known species calls. So based on maximum likelihood models, it will attribute a species identification. And so we can see how certain the program is that it properly identified the correct species. So if there's one that it's very uncertain about, or there's a particularly rare species that was recorded, it can be manually vetted, where it's a visual comparison by someone who's trained to do so, can compare to a library of known calls in order to identify it. So that's a little bit on the background, the method, and the technology that we used for this project. I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of education and bat conservation. So species such as bat are historically associated with fear and phobias. These kind of misconceptions of them drinking blood or getting tangled in your hair, all of these kind of negative associations definitely hinder their conservation, support for their conservation. This is likely because of the way bats are portrayed in media and pop culture, and also they're just less familiar to us than, say, bats that we see every day, or birds that we see every day. So in reality, bats are crucial to the ecosystem function. They provide numerous ecological and economic services, such as they pollinate over 500 species of plants. They're responsible for seed dispersal. They can transport germinated seeds up to 2 kilometers from where they're consumed. Pest control, they're invaluable to agriculture. There was a study done that said if it would cost $22 billion annually in North America alone to replace the agricultural pest control that bats provide each year. So how do we get people to not think of those bad misconceptions, but to realize how crucial bats are to proper ecosystem functioning? The way that we can get that association into the general public is through public education. So there's been a lot of studies that have shown that public education and outreach can very much improve the public perception of bats. There was a study that was done where this group of researchers went into Western Indian Oceans. There's a group of islands there. It's home to 3 endemic species of fruit bats that are critically endangered. They went through and gave a lot of programs and training to the locals, and there was tangible impacts and effects that were seen in the post-program. So there was increased knowledge and pride among the local for their endemic bat species. There was an establishment of a roost monitoring program and increased participation in that. And also there was an increase in the number of environmental policies and action plans that were put into place after the education program. So the part that the outlet that we chose for our public education is nature centers. So nature centers provide a really unique opportunity to reach a very broad audience that, maybe wouldn't have known about bats in any other way. So this is the public outreach kiosk that we established at Hawk Mountain Sanctuary. This is a great place for us to have established this kiosk because Hawk Mountain Sanctuary has decades-long history of public education and conservation. And it's also located in an important mammal area in the state of Pennsylvania. So it's important that we have an index of what species are occurring there. So this screen, interactive, it's attached by this wire up to an ultrasonic microphone on the roof of the visitor center. So each night it records the bats that pass by, and if it meets the proper quality threshold, it will identify the sonogram and then compile them into nightly reports. So these nightly reports can be browsed by visitors, and they can see and hear what bats were active in that area just the night before. In addition to that, there's this little panel where you can click on all the different species of bats that are native to Pennsylvania. You can learn a bit more about their biology, their ecology. You can see their reference library of sonograms, pictures. So this provides a really important link between human and wildlife. It's also been shown, when we chose this, because it's been shown that interactive, high quality displays such as this are correlated with increased knowledge, post-visit knowledge of the species, and also increased support financially and participation in their conservation measures. So for this project, for the project time period of June to November of 2019, there was a total of 730 calls that were identified, which averages out to about 13 calls a night. Total species richness for this area was identified as 7, and 3 of these were actually species of conservation concern. So this is the beginning of a historical data set that can be referenced in the future in order to have a historical index of which species are occurring there, events, and seeing how it changes over time. So this was published in the journal, the Pennsylvania Academy of Science, this past spring of 2021. And so if you're interested in learning more about this, you can contact me in the correspondence on the screen, and I can go ahead and send you a PDF copy of this journal article. So that's about all I have. If you have any questions, I can take them now.
Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Nicole, what was one of the most challenging aspects of doing this project or this research with this kiosk at Hawk Mountain, or just in general?
Well, definitely the frequent power outages. That was one thing that it was kind of challenging, because then when the power would go out, it would shut off the kiosk, and then someone would have to manually reboot it. So we did lose like some decent amount of like nights recording because of that. So that was one challenge.
Cool. So another question, what can people do to help with bat conservation for people who are watching and are interested?
Okay, so there's a couple things you can do. Always planting native plants. That's always going to benefit species, not just bats. It's going to encourage native insects, and they will come and they'll forage off of that. Bat houses are another thing that can be erected on property that can benefit bats. Participation in surveys, counting surveys, active acoustic monitoring, which I know Dr. Haynes is involved in, where it's a walking survey. So you have the same technology, but you walk with it with a big group of people. So it's a nice citizen science outreach program. And also just cleaning your equipment between visiting sites. If you're going from one cave to the other for some reason, just make sure to disinfect your equipment, because that's how white nose spread from Washington State to the East Coast in a year.
Wow,
it was probably on someone's boot. And
wow.
So
wow. Gotcha. All right, here's another question. Are there any native plant species in particular that are good for bats? She said, like example, red oak.
Yeah, so shagbark hickory, that's what comes to mind. So that's a really important tree species for them because of the shedding bark. They'll go and roost up underneath. So that's a species. There's a couple different oak species. There's a big list of them that are beneficial for bats. But another thing that's important is just the retention of snag trees. The trees that have died, they're beneficial for not only bats because they'll use them to roost under, but woodpeckers and other birds as well, other cavity nesters.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. And with the fungus, with the white nose syndrome, exotic. So are you familiar at all with theories for the origins of it coming to the United States?
I'm not 100% sure. It was probably brought over by someone, and I think the first case was in Washington State about a decade ago, and by 10 years, it has been recorded in every single state. So it really only takes just one person. I think, if I'm correct on my memory, I think it's from somewhere in Asia. So white nose syndrome really is a problem in other places. It kind of just seems to have absolutely ravaged like the United States populations of bats.
Gotcha. Thank you. And another question, do all the species of bats roost communally, or do they roost just individually or in smaller groups?
I think they all roost over winter. They all need to be together for the conservation of body heat. I think their maternity roosts might be a little bit smaller, but I don't think that there's any species of bats in Pennsylvania that roost singly.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Very interesting. And I'm so happy to see you, at least on Zoom.
Yeah, no, nice to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to our audience. And I always like to end our programs with letting you know what some of our upcoming events are at Hawk Mountain. We hope to see you on the mountain. It's fall migration. I literally during this program, I just got a message from David Barber, who runs our migration count. We had our first northern goshawk today at 3:34 p.m. He's even said the time. The eagles, we have eagles coming through. We've had bald and goldens, which leads me to tell you that this Saturday is Eagle Day at Hawk Mountain, one of my favorite days. Live eagle presentations with bald and golden eagle at noon and at 2 p.m. And that is a free with the purchase of your trail pass. So you don't want to miss that. Also this Saturday, we have a book signing with Franklin Curry, Conservation Hero. That's from 2 to 4. Also this Saturday, we have our last autumn lecture for this year. And that lecture is actually in person on site inside our visitor center gallery. And that is with our very own Rebecca McCabe. And it is uncovering the mysteries of the snowy owl south of the tundra. So definitely come for that. Also, Friday and Saturday, the 12th and 13th, we're having a members day in the bookstore. So all the members will receive 20% off our merchandise, which is awesome. We have a really interesting program coming up on the 14th for women only. It's called Wild Women on the Mountain, and it's compass basics. So girls, if you want to know how to use a compass, you don't want to miss that workshop, check it out. Sunday, also on the 14th, we have a basket weaving workshop. It's called Over the Rainbow Basket, and that's at 1 p.m. And then Wednesday the 17th, we have homeschool happenings, animal behavior at 10. So we hope to see everyone soon. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Nicole, and bye for now. Take care.
Thank you.